All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ferrati, and today I'm excited to show you guys the new Negative G F3. And so what this is a chassis kit from Negative G. This is their 4th chassis kit, and this is specifically a cheater chassis. So before, the first kit that came out was the TC V1. That's this guy sitting back here. They were designed as LCG conversion kits for like your existing TRX4, SEX10 3, or Axial Capra. And, they're very good LCG kits, and they're designed to perform much better than your RTR. But they were also designed to fit within Class 2 comp rules. And so that means they have bumpers and the chassis has to be a certain length. And so this chassis, the F3, does not conform to any rule sets. So the chassis is short, the skid is very narrow. It's just meant to perform. So out here in Boise, when we crawl, we don't really do a lot of competition. I don't specifically. What I like to do is go out and find like really hard lines, new lines, and I like to have builds that'll like hit those crazy lines that other people might struggle with. It's competitive in that sense. Like I don't comp because like comps to me they're kind of weird because they're not weird, but you just end up standing around a lot and there's a lot of like funky rules, like the scale points and stuff like that. I'm not knocking it, but I would rather just go out with like a group of friends and like kind of like skating, like seeing like who can one up each other on like, doing the coolest trick, or in this case, finding the hardest line. Negative G, they started designing this thing. It's February now. Wow. They started designing this thing over a year ago, last January. I basically wanted a steeper skid angle, a little bit more clearance, shorter front lengths. So, there's less getting hung up on breakovers, and hopefully for it to be lighter. And this basically just ticks all those boxes. So you can kind of see, just compared to the TC, if you're familiar with the TC, I'll grab mine in a second. It's got a 7-degree skid. The sliders are a lot smaller. And so you basically have enough room for like an ESC on one side and a receiver on the other. I've got my receiver and ESC on the side because I'm using one of my Wraith 32 ESCs, which are really small. It's just a drone ESC. Okay, so you can kind of see, looking at them side by side, the TC was designed to be used with your stock links for ease of use, for someone that's new to LCG or comp crawling. The first Negative G kits are designed to be user friendly, and that follows over here. But so they use stock links, so you don't have to buy and wait for links, because that is like one of the biggest hangups with building a custom crawler. Is sometimes you're waiting like 2 months for links. You can see the sliders are a lot bigger. We've got bumpers and full length rails. So while these are really capable performers, as a lot of you know, the F3 is just kind of a step forward in terms of pure performance. Okay, let me put this guy back. We've got all new rails, forged carbon. You can kind of see that. So it's not weaved carbon. It's got that like super cool look to it. seems to be just as strong. Plastics are PA12 nylon, which is the same that the 1.5 kits are using now for like the TC and the SC. You can see that the rails are pretty short, so the back of the rails like stops right above the rear axle, so just that alone would make this not comp legal, because the rails have to extend like a certain length in relation to your wheel, I think. It's gonna come with standard body mount, so you've got the front post here, and then you've got the rear body post holders here, and then you have this optional half cab mount, which this is pretty cool because it can be mounted forward or backward. So you've got the half cab body mount. This is optional, but you know, if you're running a half cab body, you'll definitely want these. And it's cool because they were designed to be mounted in this forward position, or you could flip them around and mount them rearward, so they'd be like right back here. And it just kind of depends on, you know, how far you want your body to be. I like mine in the forward position because I just think it kind of like accentuates the whole, you know, forward skid design. Something cool, and you know, Jess kind of surprised me with this one, but if you look at the shock towers, let's see if we can get a good angle there. So if you look at the shock towers, you notice how there's like a row of holes. So what that means is, instead of having like a big bulky shock tower that's full of holes and it kind of looks like a cheese grater, you have this one shock tower and you can pivot it like this. And then you can also, you know, move it forward and back. So it gives you like infinite adjustability, but you know, while still keeping it minimal. Does that make sense? Same up front. And then it's using the same divorced primary drive with the classic -G tiny transfer case. You can see it in there. Keeps everything light, and something that's unique to -G is it keeps it to where the LiPo is center mounted on the skid. So, you know, the LiPo is as low as can be and it's centralized, and that's like a big bulk of your weight. So it just keeps everything nice and low. Like if you have your battery mounted like up in between the shock towers or, you know, something like that, when you bring the weight up, it just kind of defeats the purpose of having an LCG crawler. We've got our integrated band mounts, these little screws on the rear body post mount. And for some reason, rubber bands, they cause a lot of controversy. All the rubber bands are for, guys, is the rubber bands are just there to help with droop or help with unloading. So, you know, they don't restrict the movement at all. So you get full extension, full flex, but it just makes it to where the truck doesn't unload as easy on climbs, right? So I first started testing this with the prototype in like last February, I think. And I was immediately just blown away. I don't know if it's the forward skid or just the way that the rear geometry is set up. Because if you notice, there's not a lot of crazy clearance with the rear links that's like kind of trendy right now. And that's mostly because when these are being designed, they're designed with built-in anti-squat and anti-dive. So that's not something you have to worry about tuning. If you just build it per the instructions, it'll basically, for the most part, it'll be just like ready to go out of the box. And one of the things that I noticed early on is how stable this thing is when it's on its heels. Like when it's climbing, and a lot of my other trucks would start to like tip backwards, this thing will just kind of balance and grip. And it's allowed me to like basically find new lines that weren't possible before. And keep in mind, with my TC, I've already found, like I've got one line that we call the bonus gate, I call the bonus gate, that not many people can do with their rigs, regardless of how they're built, unless it's a negative G truck. There are a couple of other guys that have done it, but it's like a negative G line. And so the TCs were extremely capable, but this thing, it truly just takes it up a notch. And some of that has to do with, again, the geometry, the forward skid, and it's actually a little bit lighter too. So when I first built this, it was 4.4 pounds. Usually my builds are somewhere in between like 4.6 and 4.8 for like the TC or the CC. So when I built this and I found out it was 4.4 pounds, I actually added brass to the axles. And that's running the negative G Block Party wheels. I forgot how much these weigh off the top of my head. Let's look. So these wheels are 35 grams, so they're super light, and that helps keep the weight down. I don't run any brass in the rear axle except for hexes, brass hexes. The front portal covers are like 94 grams, so it just keeps the weight down. Two other things I forgot to mention. These kits are gonna come with the servo on axle mount. These are all gonna be servo on axle. So when you order it, you're gonna choose your servo mount for either Capra, F10, or TRX4. And then it's also going to include these links. So kind of keeping with the negative G, what's the word, ethos? Negative G kits are designed to be very user friendly, so anybody can get into LCG crawling or cheater rigs. So all you're gonna have to add is drive shafts, axles, shocks, and your electronics. And electronics you can get at negative G as well. I'm running the Rhino RMS 12. I think this is 1900 kV. And then you can get like a Rhino 40 amp ESC if you have a direct powered servo. If you have an HV servo, you get the Rhino 80 amp because it has a 10 amp BEC. And that BEC it's good enough to run an HV servo. For this build, I'm trying out a SignCam 50 kg. It's 4S rated servo. So far I haven't had any issues with it. And then for drive shafts, I'm just using these cut to length drive shafts that I found on Amazon for like $30, I think. They seem fine. No complaints with them. I just cut them with a Dremel tool. This bumper I have on here, it's an old Wordy Made bumper that is discontinued. I don't think Wordy Made is even in business anymore. This is not going to come with a bumper. It's just going to come with a spacer on the front. So you'll have to source your own bumper, but there is, 2 standard pattern mounting holes for the front to mount a bumper. And so keep in mind, that's 4.5 pounds now with a steel bumper. And that's mostly just for looks. I don't know if it helps it crawl or anything. I just think it looks cool. For lipos, I'm running TAT2 4S 650s with an XT30 connector. I forgot how much these weigh, but it, just keeps the overall weight down. And with the way I have this geared, I get about a half an hour runtime. And for pinion, I think I'm running a 12. I think it's a 12. 12 tooth pinion with Capra axles. And then I do have overdrive as well. Overdrive, underdrive. I think it's like 27% because I'm overdriving the front and underdriving the rear. So I think it's like 27%. Typically, we don't run a lot of overdrive, but I wanted to try it. And I'm still kind of on the fence about whether or not it actually helps, like hitting lines. It helps with turning. I don't know if it helps with climbing. You know what I mean? So cost. These are going to be $370 to $375 shipped, not shipped, plus shipping. And the reason why they're a little bit more pricey than the TC kits is because they do come with the links. Typically when you order links, they're usually a little over $100, I think, for a full set of links. It's been a while. And then let's see. And these are titanium links. So it's gonna come with titanium links, drivetrain, the prop shaft for the primary drive, servo mount, all of your hardware, all of your spacers, your standard body mounts. It's gonna come with all of that for $375. A lot of people will look at it initially and think that that's a lot, but once you start pricing together a full custom kit with a transmission and hardware and spacers and body mounts and a slider and sliders and a skid, it gets so crazy expensive that you'll see that these kits are so reasonably priced. And again, Negative G does that because they want more people to have access to LCG crawling and cheater rigs. It shouldn't be crazy complicated to get into. All right, folks, I think that's all I've got for this one. If you have any questions or complaints, as usual, leave them in the comments. And if you could, please like and subscribe. All right, thanks for watching.